Turn to Romans. The first chapter of Romans. We'll start at verse 18 of Romans 1. In my Bible here it says God's wrath against sin. It says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Now this wrath here he's talking about, I believe that's tribulation. Look at Acts chapter 17. Acts chapter 17. I hope that I can do this the way I planned on it, but sometimes when you plan on doing something, it's not God's will that it works that way, so we'll just do what we can. That verse 20 is the reason why I say it's tribulation. It says, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Ain't nobody going to have an excuse when they stand before Jesus Christ. In Acts chapter 17, verse 23. Acts 17:23. For as I passed by, and behold our devotions, I found an altar with an inscription to the unknown God, whom therefore ye are ignorantly worshipped in, declare I unto you. God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is the Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made by hand. In other words, these big fine churches and everything, God don't dwell in them unless, what I'm trying to say is, you've seen that where, or a picture of God standing at the door knocking. Well, if God's not in the church to start with, he's not going to dwell in it. So if the membership of that church is God's people, you can bet that God's in that church already. He won't be standing at the door knocking. Or, if he's at the door knocking, then God's not in it. It says, neither is he worshipped with men's hands, as though he need anything, seeing he give life to all, and breath and all things. And hath made one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bonds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him, and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. So God made the worlds and all things contained therein, and he gave life to all, and breath to all things. And in him we live. If God lets us live according to his will, if it wasn't for God, we couldn't do nothing.
No.
We couldn't breathe or nothing. So he holds all things in his hand. even when you're a sinner and you don't even know it. You know, I've thought back over my life, a lot of things I've done and situations I've been in. And if God didn't have his hand on me at that time, I'd have never survived.
Oh, yeah.
So I know he takes care of you. Well, in the foreknowledge of God, he already knows. So he's going to take care of you, whether you're aware of it or not.
That's right.
Look at Titus. Titus chapter 2. That's in the T section of the New Testament. Titus chapter 2. Verse 11. For the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men. So, I don't know when he appears to people, but I know one thing, that when he does appear, you're going to have to make a decision.
Right.
And it says, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously and godly in this present world, looking for that blessed hope and that glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us that we might redeem us from all iniquity and purify unto himself a peculiar people zealous of good works. If you're not a child of God, you don't have a hope. But we, as children of God, do have a hope.
You know, it's a scary thought to think that there comes a point in time of when he will quit dealing with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what the Bible says.
Yep.
Back to Romans. Look, verse 21. It says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Verse 23, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things. In, let's see, Psalms 14:1. Psalms 14, verse 1. It says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, they have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. So, it says that they become foolish in their hearts. A lot of people's that way today. In verse 24 of Romans, it says, wherefore God also gave them up unto uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. Here we're getting into a section of this Bible that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but we have to because it's God's Word.
Right.
And so all I can say is we'll just see what the Word has to say about it, and we'll let it set where it will. I believe I'm in the wrong place here. Matthew, let me go back and see where I'm at. I missed something somewhere. But we'll find it. In Romans 20, verse 24 there, let me read a little bit more. On 24, wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshiped and served the creature more than Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in the lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was made. This is, I believe, talking about the gay community.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that a person is born that way. I believe it's choice,
Yes.
because I have got 10 people in that situation. I don't hate them, but I hate what they do.
Yeah.
Look at Leviticus chapter 18. Leviticus chapter 18. Look at verse 22. It plainly says here in Leviticus, there's a lot of people, I've made this statement, you're not going to take part of this Bible in the New Testament and discard the Old Testament. It will not work. You take it from Genesis to Revelation or nothing.
Yeah.
And in verse 22 of Leviticus chapter 18, this plainly says, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. Look at Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. If a man also lie with mankind, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Now go to 1 Corinthians. We get over in the New Testament and look what it says. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, look at verse 9. It says the body is a temple. Verse 9, it says, know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, or adulterers, or adulterers, nor effeminate, or abusers of themselves with mankind. That again that takes in women and men. And look at 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy.
A lot of them believe that God made them that way, but He's not going to make you that way academic.
No.
Man, crazy.
1 Timothy chapter 1, look at verse 10. Well, let's read verse 9. Knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly, and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind. Now there it is again. For men stealers, for liars and perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. I just can't see these people that does such things. But I don't have the desire they do. And only thing I can say is even though they're in that position, that God still loves them.
Absolutely.
And as if He deals with their heart, they can be forgiven of that.
Absolutely.
But they're going to have to accept Jesus Christ in their life,
Yeah.
and He'll clean their heart up, and the outside will come clean.
That's right.
Verse 27. And it says, and well, I done read that, verse 27, but I'll read it again. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in the lust one toward another, man with man, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was met. Genesis 19. In Genesis 19, verse 1, I wrote something down there, but I'll see what it is. It says, and there came two angels of Sodom at Eden, and Lot, and sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot seeing them, arose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. These is the two angels that come into Sodom, and you know how that story goes. The people of Sodom, I believe they were sodomites. In other words,
Yeah.
they was homosexual, and but this was an example where God destroyed that for anybody that would live ungodly afterwards. And what it's saying is in this chapter, that if you live this lifestyle, you see what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. They were burned up. In other words, what it's saying, you're going to die and go to hell if you're in that state. So I believe that people that's in this situation, they don't know nothing about the Word of God, or they wouldn't be doing it. But who am I? I'm not judging nobody, but I'm just saying, I have talked to some of my people, distant relatives. I don't have anybody in my immediate family, thank God, but I do have them, and I'm not going to uphold them, and I'm not going to cover up for them. If the Word of God offends them, so be it. They just have to offend, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it or nothing else. I'm just going to tell them what the Word said. But I feel sorry for people in that situation.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to come to the right mind. In Romans chapter 1, verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, so that right there tells you that they do have a knowledge of God. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, malice, full of envy, murder, deceit, debate, deceit. I don't know what that word is. Whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, not knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them.
Yeah.
Look at 2 Peter, chapter 2 of 2 Peter. Second Peter, chapter 2. Look at verse 5. Second Peter, chapter 2, verse 5. I'm going to start with verse 4. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, an eighth person, a creature of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the... Hey, something. Bringing in the flood upon the world and of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemn them with an overthrow. And right here it is, making them an example unto those that afterward should live ungodly. So these people that live this lifestyle, I believe that what God's saying there, that they're gonna go to hell. There ain't no other way around it. But I'm not gonna tell them that they're doing the right thing. When you look around and you see all the stuff that's going on in this world.
Yeah.
Just, I think it was last week in New York. I forgot the name of the place that was a gay place for gays together. A few years back they had a riot there, and now they're celebrating. They had all those gays come in there and was marching down the street with all kinds of signs, and everybody, our politicians and everything, everybody just about is for them.
Yeah.
The gays and these other groups are speaking louder than what we are.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, when you see things like that on TV and everybody applauding them and it's for them, that's the bad thing. They encourage it. But their day's coming. And people, here we had 2 earthquakes in California. And now they're talking war with Iran. And it's common anymore. People has got used to it. But if they read what it says in Matthew about wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, it's the beginning of sorrow, and I believe it's closer than what people realize. And then you've got these people, woman wearing woman, man wearing man, and this world's getting in bad shape, and I don't see how that the Lord's going to let it go on very much longer. But when you see these things come to pass, you know the end of this age is just about ready to come to an end. The church will be taken out. Then bad part starts.
Yeah.
You want to dismiss this? That's all I have to say.
Barbara, thank you for what we've been listening to this morning. Thank you again for the one that stood before us, Heavenly Father. We appreciate it. Dear Lord, we ask you to bless the remainder of the services today, bless everyone that comes through that door. Lord, that they might be able to say or do something to help somebody along this road. Heavenly Father, we do pray for the ones that are caught up in some of this stuff our teachers been telling us about this morning. We know that you'll save anybody but a turn to you. We pray for them today. And Heavenly Father, that one that's closest to hell this morning, would you please, I pray, have somebody get to them with the light of the glorious saving gospel. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Brother, that was a great message, and I just want to say that I agree with everything you said. And let me ask you one question. I'm gonna post this video on YouTube so everyone on this earth can see it. So listen, what would you say?
I would say they better be seeking the Lord because time is running out. Thank you.
Now listen, for all who see this video, I agree totally and completely with everything he said. Please like, share, keep that in mind, and subscribe.